Good evening viewers and welcome to the Art with World. I am your host Arshad Waheed. Today our guest is Dr. Ayub Awan. Dr. Ayub Awan is a poet, researcher and essayist. By profession he is a psychiatrist and currently working as a professorial research fellow at University College London. Before that he has also served as professor of psychiatry in Queen's University, Canada. These days he is visiting Pakistan and we have requested him to come to our show and tell us about his poetry and also the world of artists and writers and what's the link between human psyche and creating art. Welcome to our show, Dr. Ayub.
Thank you very much. Arshad.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's always a dream to appear in Pakistan television.
Well, you have served in various countries and you are a successful doctor as well, but you're equally successful poet as well. So it's a not very unique combination, but it's very interesting combination, being a science student, researcher, and also creating such a fine poetry as you have done. So it might be a very usual question, but I would like to ask you, how did your interest in poetry develop? And what were the initial phases you have gone through while writing poetry?
So when I was in school, I experienced some traumatic events. My father was a prisoner of war in India. That kind of stirred my emotions. And I lived in a small village in subsistence farming community, and I at the time didn't know
in Khushab district, I guess.
In district Khushab in Soon Valley. And at the time I didn't know how to express myself, and then I went to college and I met with few of my college fellows at the time, and their company ignited my interest initially in philosophy and literature in general. And I started studying big writers who were very popular at the time, including Saadat Hasan Manto, Bedi, Rajendra Singh Bedi. And that's how I developed an interest in literature. And later on I started reading poetry. At that age, prose is probably everyone's first choice. And I became, I at the time didn't think that I can write actually.
Okay.
I believe that those people are kind of different class, different background, so I didn't see myself becoming a poet. But there was obviously something inside me, and I wrote a couple of poems and in Urdu, and I went to see Ahmad Nadeem Qasmi, who came from the same area.
He's also from district Khushab.
He is also from district Khushab and same Soon Valley, another village, Anga. And probably for every young person who was interested in literature coming from that area, he was an ideal.
Okay.
So I somehow traced his house in Samnabad, went there with one of my class fellows.
Okay.
He was actually busy in some private function. There was a birthday, but he was kind enough to answer the door and came out, gave me a few minutes, listened to my poem, and gave me a reference actually. By that time I was about to go to medical college.
Okay.
So he gave me a reference for somebody in Multan, and that person was working in Nawai Waqt and they connected me with Arshad Siddiqui. So
let me remind it for our viewers. Arshad Siddiqui is the famous poet who wrote this poem "Usse Kehna December Aa Gaya." Everyone
Yes, he
sings
was a short story writer and a poet, and at the time he was registrar Bahauddin Zakariya University, Multan. He was one of the leading literary figures in Multan. He mentored many people, as I understand. So I got connected with him, and through repeated meetings with him, I gained enough confidence to start writing. And then Nishtar at the time was very fertile place for young people. There was a group of
you mean
writers.
Nishtar Medical College?
Nishtar Medical College.
It's in Multan.
In Multan. Yeah. There was a group of people who were interested in literature, art in general. There were painters as well, and that's I became connected with that group, and I started going to an organization, Urdu Academy Multan. So I kind of became connected with the whole writers and poets community in Multan, and everybody was very encouraging. So that's how I started. And that period, with that, being connected with that group, being part of that group, I started reading international literature as well, fiction, and mainly fiction, including great Russian masters. And that's how I kind of went deeper and deeper into literature and
you read Dostoevsky, I guess.
Dostoevsky,
so
and
that also developed your interest to psychiatry, I guess, because he's so much
he was
into human mind.
It was amazing. Actually, I remember when I went for training in Edinburgh later on, one of my mentors and teachers, he was teaching us about epilepsy and the psychiatric manifestations of epilepsy, and he brought with him one of Dostoevsky's novel, Crime and Punishment.
Idiot.
And gave us, kind of encouraged us to read Dostoevsky, because there were examples of epileptic phenomena described in his novels, actually. Some people say that he himself suffered from epilepsy. So probably it was first-hand experience.
Okay, so I guess it must have been a very enriching environment at your medical school at that time, which has given you so much interaction, provided you so much opportunities to interact with intellectual and literary discourse with others.
Definitely. So it was both Nishtar, inside Nishtar, there was, as I said, there was a group of people, and many of those people became well-known poets and writers later on. And also the literary scene in Multan in general. So people like Arshad Siddiqui, Arshad Multani, and there is a list of names, Anwar Rehman. There are many who through Urdu Academy I became connected with.
So you first started writing in Urdu, and then later you turned to Punjabi writing. Maybe after your medical school, I guess.
No, in fact, I initially started writing Urdu in Urdu, and I wrote poems and some ghazals as well. And I read a couple of my ghazals in Urdu Academy, and there was very nice experience, big appreciation. But at the same time, I wrote a Punjabi ghazal, which I again read in Urdu Academy, but that was just one-off. maybe a couple of years later, when I was in third or fourth year, I had met Abid Amik, who is a famous Raiki poet. He passed away a few years ago. I see him as my mentor in general and especially mentor in literature and poetry. So he encouraged me to start writing in my own language, in Punjabi, or a Western dialect of Punjabi, which is quite close to Saraiki actually. Initially I wasn't sure, but he was persistent and gentle. So finally I started writing poems not ghazals, poems in Punjabi. And I realized that there was, for me personally, better experience in the sense that I had a better command on language, words, and that also connected me with my childhood and with the community I grew up in. So I then discontinued writing Urdu. In fact, recently, over last few months, through kind of encouragement and bit of nudging by another of my seniors, I tried to write ghazals in Urdu, but I don't think they were good standards. So I think I was probably right choosing to write in the language where I was more comfortable with.
Okay. So you have just mentioned about Western dialect of Punjabi language. Would you like to explain it a bit more?
So
what's that?
Punjabi, so again I'll refer back to my pre-medical school years. And during that period, I was a keen listener to radio Pakistan.
Well, everyone at that time was.
And so I would listen to, obviously, Urdu programs, but I listened to various programs from different regions of Pakistan, starting from Kashmir, then Hindko, Peshawar, Radio Peshawar, Multan, Saraiki programs, and Radio Pakistan Lahore, Radio Pakistan Rawalpindi with Potwari dialect. So I became familiar with all the different dialects of Punjabi. So Western dialect traditionally is the dialect that is spoken in Khushab, my district, in Sargodha, in Jang. But the reality is that there is a continuum, there is a slow change in dialect starting from Kashmir and then continuing from in Hazara area, Murree and South Potawar, and west Peshawar city, Quart city, Hindko and Quart city, and then in the western region down south Deir Ismail Khan and to Saraiki, and then there is another continuum underneath the Chang, Khushab, Jhelum, all those areas. So it's a continuum, but you cannot draw a line where you say this dialect stops and it's a slow change. But if you travel maybe 100 kilometers, then it's a different dialect.
So your area is basically a rain-fed area, I guess.
Yes,
and
it's not.
A lot of people went to war, Second World War, First World War.
Yeah, definitely.
And there are a lot of folklore, folk songs which are which depict, people, youngsters going for war to different and strange lands.
Yeah.
So did that poetry affect you as well?
That definitely, that experience has affected, and if somebody reads my poems, there is frequent reference to that experience, and that experience became very personalized for me, because as I mentioned, my father's service in army and being prisoner of war.
In 1971.
In 1971 to 1973, I was in middle school at the time, very young. I also firsthand saw the war because there is air base very close to where I lived.
Yeah.
And
very famous.
There were Indian attacks in 1971, Indian air attacks. Soonskesar. And Indian air attacks, and then those aeroplanes were intercepted by Pakistan Air Force. So I actually saw a couple of planes, Indian planes, being hit by Pakistan Air Force and falling to the ground, and the fire and fire coming out. So I have kind of experienced that. And obviously, so one generation before my father, so my grandfather generation, there were many people who went to Second World War. And actually, a cousin of my grandfather, he died there in one of the British Navy's ships were attacked and sunk, and he never returned. So it's very personal experience.
You have just referred to different dialects of Punjabi language.
Yes.
There is another debate. I don't want to go into its detail, but just if you want to comment. But Saraiki is considered a different language, or some people think it's a dialect of Punjabi.
So that's obviously that's a controversy. And some of my very close friends from Saraiki area are quite strong believer that Saraiki is a separate language. Obviously, I'm not a linguist, so I cannot comment on the technicalities. But I believe if they believe that their language is a separate language, then I support that. So that's my simple way of. So that's one way. So there are three ways to look at it. What people in the area think, linguistic experts, what is their opinion, and I also have a view based on my experience of writing in one of the dialects of Punjabi or Saraiki or Punjabi mixed. So I obviously, maybe through studying in Nishtar, I don't find it hard to read Saraiki, to understand Saraiki. Probably I'm as comfortable in Saraiki as I am in Punjabi.
In addition to your own personal experiences, being in Khushab and going through some personal traumas, what else has contributed you in your writing poetry, like classic Punjabi poetry or poetry in general at all? What are your...
So I have off and on studied regional poetry, Urdu, some Persian, especially Hafiz. But big names in Urdu poetry, starting from even Wali Dakhni, Mir, Ghalib, Atish, Nase, Musafi, and then coming to the last century, Faiz, Majid Amjad, Noon Mim Rashid, Miraji. So all those big masters in Urdu.
So you went beyond Faraz after some time?
After, of course. Actually, funnily enough, I read all those poets. But more recently, I have actually developed liking for Faraz poetry again. So
you are becoming young again.
I am either becoming young, or maybe I have a better understanding with experience. So and Munir Nazim, I mean, there is I think for a period of time I read quite a bit of Urdu poetry, and then I read Punjabi classic, Hirwaris Shah, Saif al-Muluk. Sultan Bahu is my favorite.
Okay.
Shah Hussain, I always kept Shah Hussain's book, Kafiyan, beside my. At one point in my life, I actually would memorize many of them and quoted them in my conversation. Bulle Shah, I mean, main Punjabi classic. More recently, I have started, and the Mudar.
Okay.
More recently, I have been reading Hafiz Barkhutar, and I am
of Mirza,
totally
who wrote Mirza Sahiba?
Who wrote Mirza? Who wrote Sahiba? Qissa Sahiba. Mirza Sahiba's Qissa, and it's amazing. I just think that I missed that. I should have read it at an earlier stage. I've also read some of the wars. That's another genre in Punjabi poetry.
What is a war in Punjabi poetry?
It's about actually wars, battles.
Okay.
A description of.
But war is an English word.
It is English word, but it is used. I don't think it's the word that's used in Punjabi. Is more probably means story of.
Okay.
But it's not that word war.
Yeah.
But mainly it describes different battles. So, for example, when Nadir Shah attacked India, Pakistan or current Pakistan, and then went to Delhi, so there is a war about it. Nijabat wrote about it, and it's amazing description of the whole, how people faced it, how people experienced it.
Okay.
And there is a war about battle in Firozpur between British and Sikh army. So,
and Najm Hussain Sayyid also wrote some wars of
he about the one is Dullah Bhatti, and I think that's more of a play.
Oh, Takht Lahore is a different play.
Yeah.
But war is
he has written.
Khan Kharal's
he has actually used or modified or made innovation in that old genre and used it to depict the modern both thinking and experience of modern person.
You have talked about these classic
Yeah.
poets of ours. Who are the contemporary poets you like most?
So there is a whole list of them, and I will start with Najm Saab. In Saraiki, Abid
Najm Hussain Sayyid.
Najm Hussain Sayyid. And in Saraiki, Abid Ameek, Rifat Abbas, their famous name, Ashulal Fakir, Mushtaq Sufi in Punjabi. There are many more. Irfan Malik is one of my favorite. In India, Pash, and I mean, so many people write poetry in Punjabi. It has become quite fashionable, and there are many. So I would be missing many names, but I try to keep up with modern Punjabi writers, both poets and fiction writers as well.
I had gone through your very nice collection of poems, Kidi Da Atta. Most of your poems, they describe a relationship of your inner feelings and nature around. Fauna and flora, the trees, the fragrance, the ambience, mostly rural. And then you connect it with your, and even not only yours, but the feelings of many other people. It's kind of imagination, a scene composed of human feelings interacting with the surroundings. Would you like to say something about that?
So I think probably it stems from, started at least, from a deep connection with nature. I lived in as I said, in a small rural farming community. The closest carpet road was about 4-5 kilometers. So I think that gave me opportunity to connect with the nature, with trees, with different types of trees, with birds, with animals, and I think that has stayed with me.
Okay.
Also, I find it, I kind of, some of the characters in my poems are birds, sparrows, crows, and they come and talk to me or talk to other people. So I think it comes naturally to me. So I don't think I have learned that. Probably I have managed to refine that with the reading and connecting with the literature, but probably it was part of me.
And how does it feel when you see that that environment, that ambience of nature, trees and birds and fragrance is imperceptibly fading away, and we are not even registering it at all? So it's a totally different world you are living in.
So that's why I want to preserve it, at least in my mind and in my poems.
Okay.
So it's sad, and I think that's the nostalgia part of it. That I have no way to preserve it outside, in the outside world, but I kind of I've tried to preserve it in the poetry, in the language, in at least in my inner world, and some of the material I have written.
Okay. Another aspect, very distinct aspect of your poetry I found was commentary on social things, social justice particularly, and difference of status between different classes. And I read your poems on Nazir Abbasi, who was an activist in 80s, and he was hanged. And then Che Guevara's poetry. Does it tell a particular bent of your mind to how you see the world around? Or?
So I grew up in 70s, and that period around the world was radical thinking. We can change the world around us. We can make things more just for everyone. And I think that's how it started. And then I had some friends who provided me with information about the radical politics. So I was quite radicalized in my thinking at the time. I am more of a believer in evolution, but I definitely believe in maybe social democracy and equal opportunities for people, and with our growing young population, opportunities for everyone. But I now realize that it's not. I think that probably was a simplistic worldview. It's way more complex, and the change takes place very, very slowly. Maybe
does change happen?
I think if we
have human beings changed over time?
Human beings have probably not changed in their essence, but I think opportunities have become more accessible. I mean, if I think about myself, I don't think the opportunities life gave me were available for my father or my grandfather. So I think things have definitely changed, and changed for the better in that sense.
Can I request you to recite one or two of your poems if
Yeah.
they have been translated in English
Yeah.
somehow?
I must give credit to one of my friends. He is a physician in England,
Yeah.
Dr. Taraman Saeed.
Yeah, I know him. He's a wonderful writer. I read his
And he's very good
columns,
English
and he's
writer.
extraordinary.
Yeah.
So you doctors have monopolized literary world in a way.
I think there are many people who are not doctors and very good writers. But he translated actually
Yeah.
some of my poems. So I read a translation. The sheep of Talagang
Yeah.
jump over the sandstone rocks at the sight of the spring grass.
Wow, beautiful.
The sheep of Talagang jump over the sandstone rocks at the sight of the spring grass. They say, our milk is full of cream, our wool is sold abroad.
Yeah.
For the streets of Islamabad, no fodder is befitting. Sparks fly from their hoofs. How they glide all abreast.
Wow, beautiful. Yeah, again, I mean, as we were discussing before, you tell so much social disparity and injustice around us. But I also want to, I mean, it's an opportunity you are with us, and in addition to your contribution in poetry, you have also contributed in global research about genetics and mental ailments. I would like to hear from you, and then I would also ask about something. I mean, why we write and what's the problem of writers and painters? Why do they create?
So my interest in genetics of developmental disorders and psychiatric disorders started when I was working in Mayo Hospital, Lahore. I saw families with multiple children affected with very severe developmental disorders, and I realized that these disorders are not well understood. So that's how I became initially interested in genetics research, and that was maybe late 90s, middle 90s, and then I have continued, and then I realized that the global research in psychiatric genetics, the populations outside Europe and US are very severely underrepresented, and there is a strong scientific reason for all the population to be represented, both for discovery of genetic mutations that cause disease, but also for benefit of the population. So that's how, with support from some colleagues in the UK and later on in Canada and US, I became involved in few big studies, and fortunately we successfully secured funding, international funding for those studies. So Pakistan is through our studies, and there are other people as well now, not in mental health but other disorders. Pakistan is very well represented in those kind of studies. Okay. So I'm really very happy about that achievement, and I hope it will continue to flourish.
Is it leading to some conclusions? Or it's going to be a long way?
No, we have some initial results. So one, not unsurprisingly, we discovered that cousin marriages are strongly associated with the major psychiatric disorders. So bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and depression.
Okay.
So that first paper will soon be published. Okay. So that's our initial finding. There are some others, but it's an ongoing process. I am hoping that we'll continue to publish from the work we have completed by now. We'll continue to publish for next 5-10 years by the time and we have no plan to stop. So we are applying for further grants to continue working on these problems, because they affect people's lives.
You're also working on genetics of schizophrenia, yes?
So that is major mental illness. So we are working on genetics of schizophrenia, genetics of bipolar disorder, genetics of depression, genetics of autism spectrum disorder. So quite a few. And we did very seminal work on genetics of intellectual disability. So when we started, we were among very few groups in the world working on families with cousin marriages. There are many now. So I think we have made significant contribution there as well. So one of my ambition, which I don't know whether it will be fulfilled in my life or not, is to develop educational packages for people to make informed decisions about marrying within the families. So there are different, so if there is no known disorder within the family, there is a lower risk, but still there is a risk. But if there is already a known genetic disorder running in the family, then with modern methods and technology, it's totally possible that you can identify couples who are at risk of having children with those disorders. So there can be very targeted prevention method for those families. So that's one of the future dreams, actually, if I get there.
Yeah. And as you say that things are getting better every day, well, you might be right. And just coming to this, I was just going to a psychiatrist clinic once, and I saw on his wall there were some paintings of Vincent van Gogh, and there was written something that he was suffering from such and such disorder, and had there been a treatment at that time, he would not have suffered. So I was just wondering, if he had been treated well, would he have created in the same manner or not? But anyway, it's just on a lighter note.
That's a hard question to answer. But there is huge amount of research on this topic. Creativity, link or association between creativity and mental illness are certain personality types. So the evidence is quite clear that there is an association, especially with the bipolar disorder. It's not clear how it works, but there are thoughts or notions. For example, in certain phases of their illness, people with bipolar disorder has a very heightened perception. They think